The battle in which the city was defended by ordinary citizens. Dear brothers and sisters, I began writing in smaller literary forms. I once wrote a poem titled Waterloo. Today I'd like to create a bit of a story around it along with a constructive commentary. On the morning on June 16th 1815, the Quatre-Bras crossroads seemed an unlikely place where the fate of Europe would be decided. Fields of ripening wheat stretched across Belgian territory. Within hours, they became a battlefield. Just 2 days before the Battle of Waterloo, Napoleon Bonaparte launched a daring campaign in Belgium. His plan was simple: defeat the British and Prussian armies separately before they could unite. These crucial crossroads of Quatre-Bras held back the army's advance. Napoleon ordered Marshal Michel Ney to capture it before the Duke of Wellington could concentrate his forces. At first, the opportunity presented itself. The crossroads was guarded by only a small Allied force. Had Ney attacked immediately with all his available forces at his disposal, historians believe that he could have captured the position before the arrival of British reinforcements. Instead, precious hours elapsed. Conflicting orders, delayed hopes, and uncertainty slowed the French advance. Meanwhile, reinforcements flowed into Quatre-Bras. British, Dutch, Belgian, Brunswick, and Hanoverian troops systematically reinforced Wellington's line. By mid-afternoon, the quiet fields had transformed into a maze of smoke and gunfire. Tall wheat concealed the advancing infantry, until suddenly the enemy lines emerged only meters apart. Musket volleys ran out at close range. The fighting became chaotic. Then the French cavalry charged. Steel armored cuirassiers thundered across the field, and lancers followed close behind, hoping to break the Allied infantry before they could prepare. The defenders reacted with remarkable discipline. Regiment after regiment formed empty squares. Bayonets protruded on all sides. Cavalry circled the formations, searching for weaknesses. Time and again, the squares opposed to Napoleon held. One regiment was less fortunate. The 42nd Infantry Regiment, the Black Watch, was captured before it could fully form a square. French lancers burst onto its exposed flank. Many were killed before the regiment could find its way back into formation. Its regimental standard was almost captured, and the regiment suffered some of the heaviest losses of the battle. By evening, neither army had achieved a decisive victory. Wellington still barely held Quatre-Bras. That same day, a few miles away, Napoleon defeated Field Marshal Bligher in the Battle of Ligny, forcing the Prussian army into retreat. The campaign was far from over. Quatre-Bras, 21 kilometers from Waterloo. 2 days later, Wellington and Bligher met again at Waterloo. Whether Ney could have changed history by capturing Quatre-Bras earlier remains one of the enduring debates of the Napoleonic Wars. Some historians believe such an opportunity existed. Others argue that delayed reinforcements, compromised communications, and the realities of battlefield combat made success far less certain than it appears in retrospect. There is no doubt that Quatre-Bras was of paramount importance. Redoubt. These crucial crossroads remained in Allied hands. This allowed Wellington to retreat in good order and then join forces with the recovering Prussians. Prussians. History remembers Waterloo because it marked the end of Napoleon's empire. But before Waterloo, there was Quatre Bras, a battle fought amid golden wheat fields, where each passing hour decided the fate of Europe. June 18th, 1815 arrived. The Hougomont farm would not have held out for so long. Dearest, we are not alone. Imagine, this is precisely the lesson in humility taught us by the Voyagers, probes that have been orbiting in space for 49 years, sending back alarming information about the fire of dust at the edge of our universe. We are not alone. On June 18, 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte faced the armies of Europe for the last time. That day, the battle under the previous day's downpour began at noon. Napoleon hesitated to begin the battle for everything, partly because of the map. The battle that decided his fate was not fought solely by professional soldiers. We are not alone. At Waterloo, thousands of civilians and militia were also caught up in the fight for Belgium. Napoleon's plan was simple. Separate the British army under the Duke of Wellington from the Prussians under Gebhard von Bücher. Then defeat each of these armies before they could unite, I said. The fighting began around Hougomont, a fortified farm on Wellington's right flank. Napoleon expected the position to fall quickly. It did not. The British and Allied troops defended the buildings, gardens, and walls with extraordinary determination. The French soldiers attacked again and again, but Hougomont held out. The fighting became so fierce that Napoleon finally sent far more troops to the area than he had originally planned. While the battle raged there, the main French attack struck Wellington head-on. The French infantry advanced across the fields. British and Allied troops waited behind the hill. The French cavalry arrived. Wave and wave after wave of troops advanced on the Allied squares. But the infantry formed tight defensive formations with bayonets pointed outwards. The cavalry could not break them. Meanwhile, something Napoleon desperately feared happened. Prussian troops were approaching from the east. Vickers' army was joining Wellington's battle. Napoleon's army was not now fighting on two fronts. The French Imperial Guard finally engaged in the battle. These were Napoleon's Allied troops. They advanced towards the Allied lines, but they were forced to retreat. Suddenly a cry ran out. La Garde recule! It was the Imperial Guard retreating. For Napoleon's soldiers, the psychological shock was immense. The French army began to crumble. By nightfall, the battle was lost. Napoleon fled the battlefield. Within weeks, he surrendered. Waterloo ended his attempts to regain power. He was exiled to the remote island of St. Helena. But Waterloo wasn't simply the defeat of one army. It ended the 100 Days. It ended Napoleon's political career, and it changed the shape of Europe. The remarkable thing is that Napoleon came incredibly close to victory. If the Prussians had arrived later, if Wellington's center had crumbled, if Hougomont had fallen quickly, history could have turned out very differently. Instead, the French emperor, who had dominated Europe for over a decade, lost his final battle on a muddy field in Belgium. And the man who once seemed almost invincible, he was defeated in a single afternoon. The strangest thing is that it is precisely what was gone that leaves the most lasting mark. The dearest, the locomotives that once whistled stand today in museum silence. Yet they were alive. They carried people through time and space, through wars, separations and returns. The whistle wasn't just a signal. It carried the sorrow of those departing, the fear of those who stayed, and the silence of those who didn't return. They carried loves broken on platforms, families separated by history, dreams they weren't allowed to grow. Today the train doesn't whistle. It's only a sign that it's time to move. We board with light luggage and gaze out the window at a world that doesn't remember. If every platform has its own story, perhaps that's why sometimes when I hear the train whistle, it seems to me that somewhere in its sounds the past resonates, silent as if it were still waiting on the platforms. The past is the totality of the events, phenomena, and experiences that have already happened and passed. In a linear sense, it constitutes that portion of time that precedes the present and cannot be directly changed, but it has a crucial impact on human life, learning from mistakes and identity. We live in the present. Sometimes we need to change our attitude, start over in war. Everything is in God's hands. There are the war between Ukraine and Russia. Sometimes we need to change our attitudes, start over. And accompanying the people is a woman clothed with the sun, wearing a crown of 12 stars. This is Mary Immaculate, Mother of God and Our Lady, immortal by her grace. Let us return to the Gospel. Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done to you as you wish. Today's Gospel speaks to us of the foreigner and the openness we should show towards those who are different from us. A Canaanite woman at the feet of Christ. Jesus appears to refuse to help the Canaanite woman because she is not from Israel, but in reality, this encounter leads him to recognize with admiration the great faith of the woman who begs him to heal her daughter. Matthew wrote his gospel for a community of Jews who had converted to Christianity. These Jews were prone to chauvinism and xenophobia, questioning the kind of relationships possible with those who wanted to join them but were not part of the chosen people. Christ tells us that what matters in God's eyes is not rationality or race, but faith and trust in God. Recall that he could not perform miracles in Nazareth, his hometown, because of their unbelief. He said to Peter, who was beginning to sink in the waters of the Sea of Galilee, "O you little faith, why did you doubt?" On the other hand, he loudly admired the Canaanite woman. "Woman, great is your faith. Be it done to you as you wish." He expressed similar admiration for the Roman centurion. "Truly I say to you, I have not found such great faith with anyone in Israel." Christ came first to the people of his homeland, and when sending the first disciples on mission, he told them, "Go to the lost sheep of Israel, not to the Gentiles and Samaritans." But then, at the end of Matthew's Gospel, he broadens and universalizes the mission. Go into all the world and proclaim the gospel of salvation. He begins first with his own community, Israel, and then goes to the others. This is an excellent missionary approach. The Canaanite woman is one of the most sympathetic characters in the Bible. She is the only person in the four Gospels to win an argument with Jesus. Facing the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Romans, Jesus always had the upper hand in his discussions with them and consistently avoided the traps set by his opponents. However, before this Canaanite woman, he must admit defeat. He, poor woman, with great courage, throws herself at the feet of the Lord, even at the risk of rejection. But it is her determination, humility, and a great faith that aroused Jesus' admiration and convinced him to grant her request just as he did with the Roman centurion. Reading the Gospel carefully, we see that Jesus is not only a universalist, but also an opponent of all forms of discrimination. One need only read the parable of the Good Samaritan, the account of the meal with the tax collectors, the visit to Zacchaeus' house, the episode with the woman caught in adultery, the meal shared with the leper, the encounter with the Samaritan woman at Jacob's well, and the words of encouragement addressed to the thief crucified with him to be convinced of his constant struggle against all forms of discrimination. Jesus' times, Jesus' times were no worse than those we know today. We have just ended the most cruel and discriminatory century in all of human history. The Nazis, in the name of the ideology and supposed Aryan superiority, believed they had the right to murder millions of Jews, Roma, the disabled, and dissidents of all stripes. They used torture, deportations, gas chambers, and extermination camps. And as the soldiers had these mocking words carved on their belts, God with us, God with us. Lenin and Stalin's communists succeeded in murdering the 10 million dissidents and filling the gulags in the north with people suspected of opposing them. In South Africa, Dutch colonizers claimed to be a new chosen race with the right of life and death over black Africans. Apartheid was a bloody, brutal, and discriminatory regime. In the United States, black people were treated like slaves long after the official abolition of slavery and continued to be tortured and lynched for the slightest offenses. Even today, as a result of this barbarity, black people fill United States prisons. In recent years, we have witnessed ethnic cleansing, euphemisms for the mass murder of the entire population in Bosnia, Rwanda, Darfur, and many other countries. In Germany, France, and Italy, I had the opportunity to visit several military cemeteries. For example, in Monte Cassino, as in many other European cities, thousands of crosses were placed on the graves of German, Polish, American, British, and Canadian soldiers who died in the war in the name of the country. All Christians who, with great glory, murdered each other in the name of greed, lust for power, and the ideology of their leaders. In Turin, Italy, I saw a sign reading, "House for sale, but not for Southerners." We are all Southerners. Somewhere to combat this discrimination, St. Paul wrote, "There is neither slave nor free among us, neither male nor female." How far we are from this ideal of the kingdom of God on earth? In the Acts of the Apostles, Peter said, "I see that God shows no partiality, but accepts from every nation those who fear him and work righteousness." Acts 10:34-35. Abraham Lincoln, a man of great faith, wrote, "Never say that God is on your side. Pray rather to be on God's side. To be on God's side means to treat all people as brothers and sisters." The great St. Thomas Aquinas added, "Those who have faith see everything through God's eyes." Jesus' admiration for this poor woman from Canaan encourages us this week to reflect on our own prejudices. We all have them, and guides us in the attitude we should adopt towards those who differ from us. Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done to you as you wish.